Now from your local election headquarters and the Arkansas Young Republicans, this is a GOP primary debate.
Hello, I'm David Goins, host of Capitol View on KARK and throughout the state. Welcome to the Arkansas Federation of Young Republicans primary debate at the Clarion Inn in Little Rock, Arkansas. We're excited to host these debates and appreciate the support of all participating candidates. Before beginning the debate, I'd like to remind all spectators to silence their phones and refrain from any clapping and outbursts until the end of the debate. I'd like to introduce our candidates for the GOP 4th Congressional District race. We have State Representative Bruce Westerman and Tommy Mall. Now, our panelists today are KNW anchor J.R. Davis, from the Arkansas Young Republicans, Sarah Dry, and from 96.5, Alice Stewart. All candidates have reviewed the rules and have decided prior to the debate by coin toss who will open and close the debate. Opening statements will be 2 minutes apiece. The winner of that coin toss, Tommy Mall, will begin, and he'll give his opening statement. Mr. Mall.
Thank you, David, and I want to thank everyone who made this event possible, starting with the Young Republicans, members of the media who are here, our viewers here in person, and those who are tuning in from all around the district this Easter weekend. Thank you for your attention. I'm running for Congress because our country is on the wrong track. I want to defend our freedoms from a federal government that is absolutely out of control. I want to work in Washington to get our country back on the right track. I want to do that with a sense of urgency that shows that I understand that every decision that Congress makes leads in one of two directions. We are either more free or government has taken our freedoms from us. It's that simple. And I want to run with a common sense perspective. I've never run for public office before. I come from business. I understand some very basic things, that just as a family and just as a business has to balance its budget, so does our federal government. What the 4th District needs is an effective, articulate defender of the values that we all share. I want to be that person, and I thank you for your attention today.
Representative Westerman, your opening statement.
Well, happy Easter weekend. Greetings, David, panelists, members of the audience, and my fellow Arkansans joining us on TV and radio. I'm Representative Bruce Westerman. I was born, raised, and live in Hot Springs in the 4th District. For the past 22 years, I've been part owner in an engineering firm, and I've not only helped build and expand a small business, but my wife, Sharon, of 22 years, and I have a family with 4 children. I've learned a lot about hard work and dedication as a 4-year walk-on football player for the Arkansas Razorbacks, where I earned a degree in biological and agricultural engineering, won 2 Southwest Conference championships, and met my wife, Sharon, there at college. I furthered my education at Yale University with a master's degree in forestry, a field that is very important to the 4th District. Sharon and I bought and cleared land, built a house, and established our home on a small farm there in Garland County. My public service career began on the local school board. I was elected to the state legislature, where I've been honored to serve as the first House Republican Majority Leader since Reconstruction. I've done this while continuing to work full-time, raise a family, and remain active in church. I have a record of service. I earned a 100% conservative rating from the American Conservative Union. I earned the highest conservative score in the legislature on 100 bills scored by the Advanced Arkansas Institute. I've earned the respect of my constituents and colleagues and endorsements from the Family Research Council and the National Rifle Association. As Majority Leader, I learned how to deal with a top-down approach from the executive branch. I helped lead 4 veto overrides that are examples of standing to protect life, protect our right to vote, and that maintain a long-established tax exemption. I have fought against government growth, cut taxes, and fought against the redistribution of wealth. I want to take my strong, proven, problem-solving leadership skills to Congress to represent Arkansas in the 4th District.
With those opening statements complete, the next portion of the debate will have candidates responding to questions from each of our 3 panelists. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to a question. During this portion, each candidate does have 3 tokens, similar to this one here, where they can respond to an answer or a claim made by the other candidate. Should a candidate wish to use a token, they will signify by showing it to me. J.R. Davis will begin with his question, followed up by Sarah Dry and Alice Stewart. Mr. Davis, you may begin.
All right, thank you, David. This question is for Representative Westerman. The 4th Congressional District is vast in resources, people, and geography. If elected to Congress, how would you allocate your resources to service this large congressional district?
JR, that's a great question. The 4th District is vast in people and resources, and the resources of the 4th District are one of the main things that we can use to help grow the economy in the 4th District. True wealth is generated when we take our resources and create manufacturing jobs and help grow the private sector. I think my role as congressman will be to help relieve the burdensome regulations on businesses in the 4th District, to help improve the infrastructure, and also to help grow the economy by helping private business and getting government more out of our lives.
The next question goes to Sarah Dry.
Mr. Mole, is that on? Mr. Mole, it is a national priority of the Republican Party to end deficit spending at all levels. This has contributed to the end of pork spending and legislation. Consequently, these cuts have impacted the expansion of the I-49 corridor through Texarkana, dredging of the Arkansas River, and other infrastructure projects that would increase commerce through your district. If elected, how will you advocate for funding these critical projects while still remaining fiscally responsible?
Well, you're absolutely right. The out-of-control debt and deficits that we face are a big problem for the United States. And we absolutely do need to cut spending, because if you look at what President Obama did, he raised it on average about 20% across all departments. And so what I would tell you is, no doubt about it, we need to balance our budget. We need to get our spending under control. As we do that, we need to do it in as smart a way as possible. And so, for example, you take the most recent farm bill that President Obama supported, 80% of that went to food stamps. He doubled that program in size while cutting other parts of spending that are perhaps more effective in getting our country back on the right track. And so some of the specific examples you gave related to the 4th District, like, for example, I-49 that's faced some constraints. Once we cut the overall level of spending, we need to make sure that we're spending what's left in the smartest way possible, and we have a lot of room to improve on that.
The next question goes to Alice Stewart.
First off, on behalf of the organizers of the debate, I want to say to Representative Westerman and Mr. Mole, we appreciate you honoring the dress code for the debate today. To a T. This question would go to Representative Westerman. Given this is hosted by the Young Republicans, the average student debt for college graduates in Arkansas is around $23,000. With your experience in dealing with financial matters in the legislature, what would you do as a member of Congress to advocate for truth in lending laws? The student debt crisis is a tremendous problem, and also to help educate young Arkansans about lending and college student loans. What would you do in that regard?
Well, Alice, that's very near to me because I have a senior who's graduating high school this year, and I'm finding out firsthand what the cost of college is. It is extremely expensive. We're imposing too much debt on our college students, not only in the cost of college, but also in our fiscal policy of the United States, where we are borrowing to expand entitlement programs. We need to reform our financial system. We need to make it where students have more opportunities not only to go to college, but to get vocational and technical training, which will be important to jobs in the 4th District, where we utilize our resources and we expand our economy, and we need that workforce to do that.
Our next question goes to J.R. Davis.
All right, Mr. Mole, considering you are only 32 years old and having only recently moved back after a long absence, what experience do you have that qualifies you to be the congressman from the 4th Congressional District?
JR, I dispute the premise of your question. I'm 31 and a half.
My apologies.
And no doubt about it, I'm on the younger end compared to most folks who are running for Congress. And as I mentioned when we started today, that's related to why I'm running, because we don't have that long to get our country back on the right track. And no doubt I've been fortunate to receive some good opportunities in education and economics and business law to jumpstart my career in economics and business and natural resources and energy investing. And what I bring to the table as a candidate is a common sense businessman's perspective about the problems that this country is facing, an understanding that this unemployment problem that is worse in the 4th District than anywhere else in Arkansas, where more than 26,000 people are looking for work and can't find it. We need someone to go to Congress who understands the economy and how the government getting more involved in our lives makes our unemployment problem worse.
Next question comes from Sarah Dry.
Representative Westerman, Given the current reports of labor shortages in Arkansas and other southern states' agricultural economy, do you think that comprehensive immigration reform should now be part of any federal agricultural policy discussion?
Yes, sir. Immigration reform has to be part of agricultural policy discussion. America was founded by immigrants and has a rich immigration heritage. Legal immigration is very important today. Our current system is not working, and it needs to be fixed. But the first thing we need to do is to create operational control of our borders. And operational control doesn't just mean securing all of our borders. It also means controlling people who come into our state or our country legally and overstay their visas. After maintaining operational control, then we need to work on a step-by-step process on reforms that doesn't allow amnesty or doesn't allow somebody who has come here illegally or stayed here illegally to move to the front of the line.
Our next question comes from Alice Stewart.
Mr. Moll, given the current scandals in Washington, D.C. on data collection with the NSA, what is your position on government data collection, and what would you do, or would you do anything to support the existing laws, or are we in need of an overhaul on our intelligence gathering procedures?
We're absolutely in need of an overhaul, and I'll tell you what I don't support. I don't support the government collecting data on all Americans who are making phone calls and texting one another. And I think that that's kind of a common sense understanding of privacy that unfortunately our government has trampled in recent years. Now, in this new era where we have the battle against Islamic extremism, against terrorism, the tools that will be used against us are different than they have been in the past. And so our being able to use technology to fight those battles is part of it. But we need to do it in a smart way that respects people's privacy, where the government's default is not just, hey, we're going to track everyone's phone calls, who they're calling, how long they're talking, and same for text messages and all that. The government should not be doing that as its default.
Our next question from J.R. Davis.
Representative Westerman, if elected to Congress, do you foresee a time in which your beliefs and knowledge of an issue trump the majority of your constituents' beliefs? And the second part of this question, what steps will you take to ensure your constituents will understand why you voted the way you did?
JR, you bring out an important point, that it's important for us to understand our constituents, to understand their way of life, their belief system, so that when I go to Washington, D.C., and I'm making votes, I'm representing the best interest of my constituents. I know that my constituents in the state legislature put their trust and their faith in me to go to Little Rock to make decisions that were in their best interest. I believe I did that. My constituents back home strongly support me in the decisions that I've made, and I intend to take that kind of work ethic, that kind of representation to Washington, D.C., so that when I do make decisions, my constituents back home support those. I live with a wife and 4 kids. I know you can't make everybody happy all the time, but I know that I will go there and I will do my best to make the decisions that are best for the 4th District of Arkansas and the people that I represent.
Next question comes from Sarah Dry.
Mr. Moll, what 3 industries in your district do you believe have the highest growth potential, and what will you do in Washington to advocate for that growth?
Tell you that the top 3 I would give you are energy, primarily oil and natural gas, though there's some potential for coal. Also forestry, which has been big in Arkansas for a long time, could be a lot bigger if the Obama administration weren't making it harder for folks to get into new homes, which is at the end of the day what drives that industry. And third, I would tell you poultry, which is the largest agricultural industry in the 4th District in terms of jobs and in terms of sales. And it's unfortunate that the Obama administration is passing policies like the ethanol mandate, which was in the Farm Bill, that makes those folks' jobs harder because of it's raising the cost of feed, not easier. But if the government gets out of the way, whether we're talking about oil and gas, forestry, or poultry, we've got a lot of room to improve in the 4th.
Okay, moving along. You guys do have 3 tokens. Don't forget about that.
I'll use one on
that. Oh, well, there we go. Representative Westerman, 60 seconds.
I would just like to address that question as well. And as you look at Arkansas, agriculture is our largest industry, followed by forestry. And in the 4th District, oil and gas are very important. We have tremendous opportunity in the 4th District with our natural resources. My job as an engineer has been to develop large economic development projects for private customers who are creating jobs. I know what it takes to build these plants to create jobs, and it's not government programs. We need to get the government regulation out of the way. We need to create an environment that's friendly from a tax standpoint, a regulatory standpoint, and we need to turn the private sector loose. The current administration is putting a stranglehold on the very part of our country, the private sector, that can get us out of this bad economic situation. My goal will be to establish our liberties and let our free enterprise system work in the 4th District.
Mr. Mall, 30 seconds to reply.
Well, I couldn't agree more of that. I guess we're in agreement here about the importance of agriculture and energy for the 4th District. Energy is something I've been involved with, a lot of coal and natural gas primarily. You know, there's a big opportunity to develop the lignite reserves that are in the 4th District. That's a lignite coal that can definitely be burned in power plants, and we should look into that. It would be a source of a lot of new jobs.
Okay, our next question goes to Alice Stewart.
Representative Westerman, you were an initial co-sponsor of the private option. You went on to vote against the private option, and you now call it Obamacare. What changed with the original substance of the bill in your mind, and explain your change of heart on this important issue for Arkansans?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Alice. I was on a working committee in the state legislature to reform Medicaid. We worked very hard to reform Medicaid. We established the Office of Inspector General. We allowed Medicaid patients to go to ambulatory surgery centers, provided drug testing for in-home service providers for Medicaid. A lot of those things came out of that working group. Also out of that working group, my colleagues came up with an idea to maybe use private insurance to reform Medicaid. We were working for solutions. I was part of the team working for solutions. We got a Good Friday memo from Kathleen Sabias that said, you can use private insurance, but it has to do everything Medicaid does. We got an Optimus actuarial analysis that said it was going to cost $2 billion a year for 10 years. At that point, I said, this doesn't work. It's a bad solution. I took my name off the bill, and I fought it. I voted against it every time. And I will continue to fight against Obamacare and to repeal it on the national level, which would end the private option in Arkansas if we repeal Obamacare.
Next question goes to J.R. Davis.
Mr. Mole, the Republicans across the state growing increasingly frustrated with the gridlock in Washington, D.C. The expectation is that our elected leaders should do just that, and that's lead. That sometimes requires our leaders to make difficult decisions. Would you be willing to push against, vote against the Republican leadership if elected to Congress? If so, what would be the conditions by which you would go against leadership?
Thanks for the question, J.R. You indicated that Republicans across Arkansas and the 4th District are not happy with the state and Washington. I would humbly submit not very many people, period, are happy because there is gridlock. And what I would tell you is who I want to represent are folks that have the common sense conservative values that have made Arkansas and the United States a great place to live for a long time. And sometimes, darn near all the time, I line up with the Republican Party. That's why I'm a member of the Republican Party and why I'm running as a Republican. But no doubt, the national party does not always align itself with the views and values of the folks in the 4th District. And as an example of where that applies in my case, as I've mentioned before, I would have voted against the Farm Bill, which was 80% food stamps and a bad deal for the farmers in Arkansas, especially in the 4th District.
Our next question goes to Sarah Dry.
Representative Westerman, the Affordable Health Care Act, or Obamacare, has been under incredible scrutiny since its passage. Aside from completely defunding this law, what reforms would you propose to improve our national health care system?
Well, Sarah, if you look at the failures of the Affordable Care Act, and we know that that's been misnamed because it's not really about affordable care and it's not really about protecting patients, it's about government control. I think we need to repeal Obamacare. Some of the areas where I have expertise that I think I can help in that discussion, and I would even like to serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee and the Subcommittee of Health there, where those discussions will take place in Congress. I've spent a tremendous amount of time working on Medicaid and understanding Medicaid and what's needed for Medicaid reform. Congressman Ryan, in his latest budget, presented an idea to use block grants and global waivers, which is a great idea. It's worked well in other states. It allows a state to take less money from the federal government than they normally do, but also with that, they get a global waiver so they can design their Medicaid program to meet the needs of their state. It provides better services at lower cost, and it truly meets the needs of those Medicaid was established for, and that's the aged, the blind, and the disabled. Not working age, able-bodied adults like the current Medicaid expansion covers.
There is a token from Mr. Maul, one of three. You have 60 seconds.
Repealing Obamacare will be my top priority in Congress. It's an awful law that, number one, is a job killer because it's chock full of tax increases and regulations. And number two, it will make the quality of health care we receive in the United States worse, not better, because it empowers bureaucrats to make decisions that we should be able to make along with our doctors. Thank you.
You have 30 seconds to follow up, Representative Westerman.
And I would agree with Tommy on that. Obamacare is not about health care. It will result in rationing of services. It will be unfair to seniors as it's cutting Medicare rates and putting more people onto Medicaid. It's putting the government between us and our doctor, and it's putting more top-down federal control into the lives of common everyday Arkansans.
All right, well, when we come back, we'll have an opportunity to see where these two candidates do not agree. They'll be able to ask questions of each other in the next portion of the debate. You're watching the 4th Congressional District GOP debate on KARK, KNWA, Arkansas Matters across the state. We'll be back after a brief break for the next portion of the debate. Like the break right now? I don't see that. We did the first opening. There you go, on the fly. We can all. That's outside of my. That's outside of my expertise. Yeah. Fourth Congressional debate here in Little Rock with State Representative Bruce Westerman and Tommy Maul. We now move to the portion of the debate where each candidate will be allowed to ask a question directly to the opponent, who has 60 seconds to respond to said question. State Representative Bruce Westerman, you will be able to ask the first question.
Thank you, David. Tommy is from serving on a school board and serving in the state legislature. I know that understanding the culture and the way of life of constituents can be very valuable in representing them. I'm not sure if you own a home or property in the 4th District. I'm not sure if you've ever voted in an election in the 4th District. And my question is when did you move from Greenwich Village in New York City?
I've been in the 4th District about a year now, and I can tell you, both for my wife, Meredith, and for me, Arkansas always has been our home, and it always will be our home. And that applies to both of our families for 6 generations. And on both sides, all 6 of those generations have lived in the 4th District and played important roles in the development of it, including in our hometown of Hot Springs, where my great-granddad, almost 100 years ago, as an entrepreneur, created the dams and lakes that now have a lot to do with what Hot Springs is. So I'm proud of our family's history in Arkansas in the 4th District. Look forward to representing it in Congress.
All right, the next question will come from Tommy Maul, directed to State Representative Westerman. Mr. Maul.
Bruce, a few minutes ago, when talking about your history on the private option, you indicated that you were part of a working group that was looking at Medicaid reforms, but you're perhaps best known for a speech you gave where you implied your fellow Republicans were Judases because they were going to vote against that private option bill. And when I went back and took a look at it, I noticed that you were one of the co-sponsors of that bill. And I also noticed that it wasn't until after that Good Friday memo came out last March that you then added your name as a co-sponsor to that bill in April. And I also noticed that there weren't any real differences in the version that you added your name to as co-sponsor and the one that passed. And so I just wonder, in those few days between when you became a co-sponsor until you took your name off, what changed your mind?
Yeah, Tommy, I'm not sure where you were when we were debating this and fighting Obamacare in Little Rock, but I can assure you I was there on the front line. I've got a letter that 19 of my colleagues have signed that will ensure that I was leading the fight against implementing Obamacare in Arkansas. I'm an engineer. I've been trained to solve problems. I was working to solve problems. I look at solutions with an open mind. When I see the data that's not correct, I have the courage to step up and say it's wrong. The 30 pieces of silver comment was directed at the federal government, and I think that's a lot of what the problem is in our country today, is that we're bought off by free money from the federal government. I was suggesting that we reject that free money, which is like 30 pieces of silver, and I stand behind that statement still today.
All right, well, due to your adherence to brevity on both parts, y'all do have an opportunity to ask another question of each other if y'all have one prepared. If not, that's fine. Okay, that's where we'll be right there. Okay, well, when we come back, we'll move to the third portion of the debate where panelists will have an opportunity to ask questions once again of our two candidates, State Representative Bruce Westerman and Tommy Mall. You're watching the 4th Congressional GOP debate on KARK. Back after a short break. You'd rather be doing turkey right now, right? That's true. That's true. Sunrise. And welcome back to the 4th Congressional District debate here in Little Rock with State Representative Bruce Westerman and Tommy Mall, the two candidates on the GOP side. We now join our third portion of the debate, which is very close in proximity to the first portion, which essentially is our three panelists asking the candidates questions. We will, again, have 90 seconds to answer the questions, each candidate. We now begin with our panelists. We'll start with J.R. Davis. J.R.
All right, thank you, David. This question is for Representative Westerman. Understanding that the Republican Party has a large umbrella, there are many facets to the party: fiscal and social conservatives, moderate conservatives, establishment, and Tea Party conservatives. Where do you see yourself in the Republican spectrum, and how will that influence this race and your focus in Washington?
JR, I'm a conservative. I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm a social conservative. My voting record shows that I'm a fiscal conservative and a social conservative. I have had the great pleasure to serve as the majority leader of the state House of Representatives, which also put me on the state executive committee of the Republican Party of Arkansas. So from that standpoint, I've kind of got the establishment perspective of what the Republican Party is. I've been endorsed by the largest Tea Party in the 4th District, the Garland County Republican Tea Party. I understand where the Tea Party and the Patriot groups are coming from. They're salt-of-the-earth citizens that want to see change in this country, and I'm glad to represent them. I'm glad to represent all Republicans, and it's important as Republicans that we band together and that we not let the Democrats drive a wedge into our party and try to make us establishment Republicans and Tea Party Republicans. We're Republicans. We've got to fight together as conservatives to win these races and to change this country.
Mr. Mall, you've indicated you'll use your second of 3 tokens. You have 60 seconds.
One of the most important issues for Republicans in Washington to get straight is that we need to be an inclusive party that includes folks in the Tea Party, that includes business leaders, that includes common sense conservatives from all across the 4th District, Arkansas, and the United States. Our campaign is proud to have the endorsement of folks from all of those groups, including Freedom Works, which is more Tea Party leaning, lots of business leaders from some of the industries we mentioned earlier, including oil and gas and timber in the 4th District, and lots of common sense conservatives, and whether they come up to you after a Tea Party rally or a county committee meeting or a fish fry, or you name it. Folks from all walks of life need to be part of the team, and that's the kind of team we're proud to have.
Representative Westerman, 30 seconds.
And also, I want to talk about inclusion in the Republican Party. As the House Majority Leader, I helped to recruit candidates to run for the State House. We have more female candidates. We have more minority candidates than we've ever had to run for the State House. The GOP is a large umbrella. We've got to bring more people in, and regardless of skin color, regardless of sex, people are conservative, and the Republican Party is a home for them.
Next question comes from Sarah Dry.
Mr. Mole, records show that you voted in a Democratic primary here in Arkansas back in 2006. Could you please defend your vote?
Well, unfortunately, Arkansas has essentially been under one-party rule for more than a century. Not so much anymore, but for most of the last 100 years, that's been the case. And so in a lot of these local races, the only way you could have a say, no matter your political beliefs, was you would vote in a Democrat primary. And that still happens today. That will happen in this Republican primary. You'll see variations depending what county you're in. Folks who want to have a say in their local government, where we don't yet, but will soon have good Republicans running for judge and other local races. So that's what that was about.
Representative Westerman, your second of 3 tokens, 60 seconds.
Yeah, I've found that data as well, Sarah, and I noticed in that it was a lieutenant governor's race, an attorney general's race, and a treasurer's race where we had Bill Halter, Dustin McDaniel, and Martha Schaffner in that Democratic primary runoff. But interestingly, that fall, we had a general election where we had some conservatives from Tommy's hometown of Fort Smith, Senator Bozeman, Asa Hutchinson, Gunnar DeLay, who were all running in the general election, yet Tommy didn't vote in the general election, yet he voted in that primary runoff election for those Democratic candidates. And we could have used his vote for Asa for governor that year.
30 seconds, Mr. Mall.
Bruce, I'll just have to take your word on it. I haven't thought that hard about each and every vote I've been able to take. It's unfortunate we haven't elected more Republicans in Arkansas in our past, and I'm running now because I want to elect as many as we can going forward.
Next question comes from Alice Stewart.
Energy independence is vital for our nation for economic reasons as well as national security reasons. Representative Westerman, you have publicly called for Arkansas natural gas to be used as a, quote, tool to combat Russian aggression in Eastern and Central Europe. However, the United States, as we all know, is years away from having the ability to export natural gas. Tell us, please, how Arkansas natural gas could affect Russian aggression in Europe.
And Alice, I would disagree with that to some point, that we are on the road to being able to export natural gas through liquefied natural gas. That's a process where you compress the gas and you refrigerate it, you put it on a ship and ship it overseas. I've done work in the UK before. I've seen port facilities where they actually bring in liquefied natural gas. Our issue internationally is we don't have the trade policy in place, not only with the Ukraine, but one of our better allies in Japan. We don't even sell our natural gas to Japan, and we couldn't sell our natural gas to Japan even if we had it on a ship sending it that way. I was told that natural gas prices in Japan are as much as $16 per MCF. That is a high natural gas price. You could put a lot of cost into gas, putting it on a ship, compressing it, refrigerating it, and shipping it overseas. It would also be great for our economy, and especially our economy in the 4th District, where we have a lot of natural gas plays.
Mr. Mall, you're using your third and final token, 60 seconds.
What we need in the Ukraine to make that situation better is a president that will stand up for American values and for freedom. Longer term, absolutely a free market in energy, which we do not have here in the United States, nor do we have in Ukraine and a lot of places in the world, would alleviate the problems over there where Putin can just dictate terms to his neighbors because he sells natural gas to them. But in the near term, we need a president to stand up for what's right, not to lead from behind like President Obama. On the flip side, the most important thing we can do for the natural gas industry here in Arkansas and the oil industry is push back on President Obama's budget released just a few weeks ago, where he has a tax hike in there that will put out of business dozens, if not hundreds, of oil and gas producers all across Arkansas. That impacts not just them, but everyone in these communities like Smackover and Magnolia, where even if you don't work in that business, you will be impacted by that. And we're under threat from President Obama. We need to fight that.
Mr. Westerman, 30 seconds.
You know, we get threats not only from the federal government, but even from our state government. In the last legislative session, Governor Beebe tried to veto a provision to include a natural gas industry exemption on proppants that have been in place since the 40s. We overrode that veto. We have to be bold. We have to be able to understand the issue and do things from a policy standpoint that allows industry to thrive. We're forcing our natural gas drillers in Arkansas to move to other states where the policies are more friendly.
Our next question goes to J.R. Davis.
This one's for Mr. Mall. You have raised a considerable amount of money for your race, most of which is not from the state of Arkansas. How can we as Arkansans be assured that you will not be influenced by outside forces if elected for office?
I hate to pick on JR again, but I dispute the premise of the question. Majority of the funds we've raised have been from right here in Arkansas every quarter and overall, and we're delighted with how that's going. But I tell you, fundraising is one part of a much broader strategy to run a good campaign and to be an effective member of Congress. And so that's why we've campaigned in all 33 of 33 counties, laying down roots and forming bases of support across all 33 counties. We have a long list of volunteers who are now helping us get the word out about this campaign, and we're going to run it that way right now through May 20 on primary day.
Let's move to Sarah Dry with our next question.
Representative Westerman, the 4th District has some of the poorest testing and educational outcomes in our state. Where do you stand on Common Core?
Sarah, now, right now, Common Core is a state issue, and I hope it doesn't become a federal issue. I think the Common Core state standards have been mislabeled. They really should be called the Common Core national standards, but like a lot of things that get the Fifth Avenue branding today in politics, it probably wouldn't have caught on if it was a Common Core national standards. I'm concerned about placing the control of education in one point where it can be controlled by one group. Right now, that's the private corporation and the National Governors Association. If you get that control in one place, then that control could be moved over to the federal government or somebody else. I believe we need to keep state standards in the state. There are better standards than the Common Core state standards. The state of Massachusetts has good standards. We could have adopted those here in Arkansas, increased our standards, maintained complete control of our standards, and improved education in Arkansas. Standards by themselves aren't going to improve education. We have to focus on curriculum. We have to focus on children instead of bureaucrats in Little Rock and a top-down approach to education. We need to keep education local. We need to support our teachers, and we need to come up with proven research-based programs that work. I've fought that in the state legislature. We need more school choice, and we need to give parents more control of their kids' education. That's how we will improve education in 4th District and the whole state of Arkansas.
Okay, our next question comes from Alice Stewart. Alice.
Mr. Mole, in your ad that you have on television, you describe yourself as a Christian, conservative, and businessman. You mentioned specifically Christian first. Does your faith influence your politics? Why or why not?
It absolutely does, Alice, and I'll tell you how. When you are a Christian, you're reminded every day that we need to approach this life humbly and realize that people don't always have all the answers to the hard questions in life. But while we do have a precious few moments to enjoy this life, we need to live in a way, and we need a government that governs in a way that respects the one who gave us that gift of life. And unfortunately, President Obama's policies are not like that. I'll give you one example, the Hobby Lobby case, where they're going right at the religious freedoms of folks who are good Christians who are running a business and want to run that business in the way that they think adheres to their values and their Christian beliefs. And the Obama administration in court is essentially telling them they can't do that. But what's important to keep in mind is one's faith is more than about showing up for an hour on Sunday. It's about the way you live your life, and we ought to have leaders who make sure that our government defends our religious liberties and our ability to do that.
Okay, moving forward, we now have about 10 more minutes left for questions. Our next question from panelist J.R. Davis. J.R.
This question is for Representative Westerman. The Federal Highway Trust Fund that finances more than $50 billion annually in highway and bridge construction is on course to run bankrupt by late July. Should this occur, it could be devastating to our road infrastructure in Arkansas and our ability to maintain federal and state roads. Do you have a solution to preventing this fund from going bankrupt?
JR, that is a very important question. As a member of the Arkansas General Assembly, we got letters earlier that said, this was from the State Highway Department, that there may be as many as $60 million in projects that are curtailed because of lack of funding from the federal government. We do not have a revenue problem in the federal government. We have a spending problem. We have our priorities wrong. We are increasing entitlements, we are expanding government programs, and we are neglecting the things that the federal government should be involved in, which are protecting our citizens, which are providing infrastructure. Infrastructure is crucial to the 4th District, with Interstate 49 going north and south down to Louisiana, with Interstate 69 proposed to cut across the southeast part of the state. And we also have navigable waterways in the Arkansas River, the Ouachita River, and the Red River. I would hope to be able to serve on the Transportation Committee. I think my background as an engineer would be very important in that area. We need to get, first, a budget passed in Congress that we've not had since Barack Obama has been president, and we need to prioritize in that budget so that we have funds to spend on infrastructure, which will help develop our economy.
Our next question goes to Sarah Dry.
Mr. Mole, Nashville, Arkansas Mayor Billy Ray Jones has recently stated he opposes Congressman Cotton's position on immigration reform because it prevents good people from working in his town. Do you agree with his position on immigration? Why or why not?
I agree with Congressman Cotton's position on immigration. And it comes down to the fact that we need to first have a federal government that is effective at doing what it was set up to do. And one of those things is to patrol and control our own national border. Until we can do that, it's going to be very difficult to get to the major reforms we need for our immigration policy. And now I understand the mayor's concerns because there are a lot of industries, particularly in that part of the state, particularly the forestry industry, that rely heavily on folks from other countries coming here to work. And I understand that's tough. At the same time, the number one thing the federal government needs to be able to do with respect to immigration is control the flow of it. And to do that, we need to be able to control our own border.
Our next question goes to Alice Stewart.
On that issue of immigration, Representative Westerman, the Gang of Eight has a plan in the Senate that has passed and is waiting for discussion in the House. And it's clear the House Republicans are divided on that critical piece of immigration legislation. Where do you stand on a comprehensive package of immigration?
And Alice, as I stated earlier in the debate, my position on immigration is first we have to enforce the laws we've got. We have to establish operational control, which means protecting all of our border with Mexico, our border with Canada, and our borders on the ocean. We have to protect those borders, and we have to have operational control. As I said, 40% of the immigrants or the undocumented immigrants that are here because they've come with a valid visa and they've overstayed their time. We have to enforce existing laws. We have to secure the border, gain operational control, and then we can talk about step-by-step reforms to deal with immigration policy. That doesn't include amnesty. That doesn't include allowing somebody at the back of the line to move to the front of the line ahead of people who are trying to immigrate here legally. Immigration is important to our country. We need it for diversity. We need it for agriculture and forestry and other industries. That is an issue we have to work on, but we can't ignore the laws and the regulations that we have that aren't being enforced.
Our next question goes to J.R. Davis. Mr. Davis.
All right, thank you, David. This question is for Mr. Mall. Only 25.9%, about 26% of 4th District Arkansans hold a college degree. You have 2 degrees from East Coast institutions, 1 from the London School of Economics. Considering this disparity, how do you intend to relate to the average Arkansan and their needs?
JR, as I mentioned before, I've been fortunate to have some opportunities to get an education in economics and business law, But what I can tell you, after having campaigned in all 33 of 33 counties here in the 4th District, is that folks from all walks of life are pretty much united in figuring out what our country needs to do to get back on the right track and what's wrong with this president's policies to use the federal government to try to take over everything. We also need a member of Congress who understands the economy, who understands how serious this unemployment problem is, specifically here in the rural 4th District, and can go up to Washington and be an effective advocate for jobs in the 4th.
Our next question from Sarah Dry.
Representative Westerman, Arkansas is a balanced budget state. Do you believe the federal government should be required to have a balanced budget as well?
I think the federal government should be required to have a budget in the first place. Until we know how much we have to spend, it's hard to control how much you spend. We have balanced our budget here in Arkansas. There's a little bit of a misnomer there. We balance our general revenue budget, which is the $5 billion of income and sales tax that we collect, yet we still spend about $24 billion each year in Arkansas through money coming in from the federal government and other revenue sources in the state. Our issue with a budget, it gets back to entitlement programs. Even here in Arkansas, where we have a $5 billion balanced budget, with this Medicaid expansion, we will be spending $7.6 billion per year on Medicaid alone. That's more than prisons, that's more than K-12 education, and that's more than higher education combined. These entitlement programs are not only destroying our budget, but they're also taking necessary services away from prisons, education, and infrastructure projects, as we talked about earlier.
Alice Stewart with our next question.
Mr. Mole, the building infrastructure is critical for our state and our nation in terms of roads, bridges, waterways. It's an issue of safety in this country, also the economy. Where do you stand? What would you do as a member of Congress where would your priorities be on building infrastructure and making sure that the proper funds are there?
Well, ideally, we do as much of that as we can at the local and the state level. Now, the world we live in today is one where the federal government has injected itself into darn near all aspects of our infrastructure. And so starting from where we are today and where we want to be, we want to make sure that what we have allocated to spend is spent in the smartest way. And unfortunately, you look at the priorities that our president has, and that often gets one of the lowest priorities because he's got all these new kind of social programs, Obamacare and food stamps and you name it. Well, that takes away from what we can do on the infrastructure side. So I advocate for taking whatever has already been allocated to be spent and doing it in the smartest way possible. And I-49, if you look at it, could be critical in the 4th District if we're smarter about how we spend our funds.
Okay, we got time for a few more. Next question comes from J.R. Davis. J.R.
This is a question for both candidates. If you lose this primary election, will you endorse, obviously endorsing your opponent, but what will you do and what kind of support will you give your opponent if you lose this primary? And we'll start with Mr. Mall.
I keep coming back to disputing JR's questions, and I hate to do that. Why are you making me think about losing? We're not thinking about that. But I'll entertain the question. No doubt about it, whoever emerges from this primary should have the full support of all the Republican Party of Arkansas in the 4th District, because it is critical when Tom Cotton becomes our next senator that we keep this 4th District on the Republican side. Not for the party's sake, but because our values, our common sense conservative values, are right in line with the folks who live there. And we need to make sure that the person who's representing the district reflects the views and values of the folks that they represent.
Mr. Westerman.
Thank you, JR. Absolutely, I'll support the Republican nominee for whatever office, because I believe any Republican nominee is better than the Democratic nominee. The Democrats have put up a strong candidate in James Lee Witt for this race. I believe we need a strong, proven candidate who can go up against Mr. Witt. I believe I am that candidate. I plan on winning the race, but if that doesn't happen, I'll be the first to support our Republican candidates.
Gentlemen, I'm going to break format for just a second. As our final question, y'all are both from Hot Springs, both clearly fiscally conservative. I'll start with you, Mr. Mall. What would you say would be the one distinguishing differentiation between yourself and State Representative Westerman?
I think the biggest difference between us is I don't see any version of Obamacare that's right for Arkansas. And unfortunately, Bruce was, as I mentioned before, a co-sponsor of a version of Obamacare in Arkansas. He now calls it Obamacare. None of the substance of that law changed between the time he decided to co-sponsor it and the time he decided to take his name off of it. But where I stand is there is no version of Obamacare that's right for us. We need to repeal it.
30 seconds to respond, and then your key differentiation, Representative Westerman.
Thank you, David. Well, first off, the difference is that I understand what happened with Obamacare in Arkansas, and Tommy apparently doesn't understand it. Maybe he wasn't getting that information in New York City. The second thing is I have a proven record, a record that I'm proud of, and a record that I will stand up and debate any day. I've got not only a legislative record, I've got a life record and life experience that I think the people of the 4th District expect, and they deserve that kind of representation in Washington, D.C.
Okay. That will wrap up the question and answer portion of the debate. We have now moved to final closing statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute, and we begin with the closing statement from Mr. Tommy Mall.
I want to thank everyone once again for making this event possible. I'm running for Congress because our country is on the wrong track under President Obama. We're on a path to bankruptcy. I am running because we live in the greatest country in the world, and I want to keep it that way and get us back on the right track. We do that by having a sense of urgency that recognizes that every decision that Congress makes leads in one of two directions. Either government becomes more powerful or people are given back more of their freedoms. And I want to fight for our freedoms. The 4th District of Arkansas needs an effective, articulate defender of our values. I want to be that person, and if I've done anything to convince you this morning that I can be, I hope I have your vote on May 20th. Thank you.
State Representative Westerman, 60 seconds.
Right. I'm running for Congress for the 4th District, not because it's a lifelong desire or a dream. It's not because I don't have a good career and a family and other things that I enjoy doing, but because I believe it's a duty. It's a duty to go there and to make a difference, to make a better life for my kids and my grandkids. Being burdened with federal debt is not a good opportunity for them. I want them to have the same opportunity that I had growing up here in Arkansas. I understand the rural conservative values of the 4th District of Arkansas. I understand what it's like to serve in the legislative body. I have the experience, I have the life record, and I believe I am the man to go to Washington, D.C. and to represent the 4th District of Arkansas. I greatly appreciate you joining us here for this debate today. I ask for your support. I ask you to go out and vote early on May 5th and to vote in the primary on May 20th. God bless you and have a good day.
Gentlemen, thank you. And it's become a bit of a Arkansas Young Republican tradition, at least on this debate, is to have one extra question after the closing statement. We'll leave that open to Alice Stewart. Alice.
And we ask if you will, you're brief and concise today, will you be the same on the floor in Washington? That is not the question. That's just an observation. No, clearly we all are grateful for the Young Republicans for hosting this debate. And the younger generation has been, a lot of people would agree that they feel as though they have been taken advantage of, given the Obama administration made them many promises, and they have come to find out that has not been true with Obamacare. What can you say to the younger generation, the young Republicans, the young people of Arkansas, that your policies are either different from your opponent, but certainly different from James Lee Witt? What will you do specifically to benefit the lives of young Arkansans? Mr. Mull. This is for both of you, but we'll start with you, Mr. Mull, please.
Well, I get asked all the time on the trail, how old am I, and is that old enough to run for Congress? And so I absolutely understand the challenges and concerns that the rising generation has. You know, they come out of college, and in theory, that should lead working hard for 4 years, getting your degree. You should get a job at the end of that. But the best that Obama can offer them is, hey, sorry you have all that debt and no job, but we'll let you stay on your parents' insurance till you're 26. That is not the optimistic future that we ought to be fighting for. We ought to be fighting for a future where if you work hard and you play by the rules, you can get a job and provide for your family, just like for most of our country's history, we have succeeded.
Representative Westerman.
Thank you, Allison. I would add to that, it's not just the younger generation that's been disenfranchised by this administration. My parents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary last night. Seniors in this country are being disenfranchised by Obama through the cuts to Medicare and the programs that he's putting on us. We've got 11,000 baby boomers per day retiring in this country. I have children. I have children that I would like for them to have an opportunity. If we don't go and make laws and policies that restore our freedoms, that allow our kids to have an opportunity, not to have anything promised to them, but to have the opportunity to succeed and the opportunity to fail, the opportunity to do right and to fail and to get back up and try again. That's what we had when we were growing up. When I was a young man, Ronald Reagan said, "Now is the time." I think now is the time that we take this country back. Now is the time that we regain our liberty, that we regain our freedoms, and that we protect that for our future.
Gentlemen, you've made it through the gauntlet. Campaigning will be easy after this. A round of applause for State Representative Bruce Westerman and Tommy Mall. All right, well, this will conclude the 4th Congressional District debate on KRK, KNWA, and on ArkansasMatters.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and obviously enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you very much.